So welcome everyone. It seems like such a build-up, hey Steph, in terms of all the hype around this. It was a conversation and now here we are. And it's fantastic to have you here. I'm so excited to get this conversation going. It's something that we're both passionate about. And I mean, you are a walking example of what amazing work you have done when it comes to employer branding and utilizing and leveraging employer brand marketing in order to scale according to iKhokha's product and services, and which often is not the case. As we know it, organizations like to do sell of their product or service first, and then afterwards they think, oh, wait a minute, we need the people to actually deliver. And it's almost something that has to happen simultaneously, right? And I think that's where the great advantage has been when it comes to the iKhokha brand. The fact that you were working on that talent brand simultaneously, it makes a huge difference. So, yeah, so welcome, Steph. I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you, Celeste.
Okay, so without further ado, just I thought I'd just throw a little bit of an interesting collage of photographs up here, because it's always nice to know who this person is that organizes these spotlights on a monthly basis. It's something that, it was a mission that I wanted to put into play in 2024. And I said to myself, I think knowledge sharing is very, very important when it comes to actually getting people's understanding around what employer branding and marketing is all about. The best way to do this is to actually get not only African leaders, but international leaders, global leaders to come together and actually share what they do in the employer branding space. Now, the iKhokha brand, it's the first case study that we are doing. This is the 5th spotlight. And if you go into Employer Branding Africa's Learning Academy, you can actually see the history of all the recordings. So I'm very pleased to say that we are on number 5. I know it seems small, but we're getting there. And the knowledge has been amazing. We've had people from far and wide, and I hope to be building on that. A little bit about myself. I'm the CEO, the founder of Employer Branding Africa, and more recently, the Employer Branding Africa Learning Academy, which basically teaches people how to embody employer branding and recruitment marketing in their talent management strategies. And as you can see, I love getting upfront and personal, getting in the trenches. I love socializing. I like presenting. I stay in Cape Town, one of the most beautiful places in the world, I believe. I like to go into the mills. I like to go into the plants. I like to go and have discussions and really get into the operations to understand what actually makes businesses tick, not just from a corporate level, but actually in the trenches. Because I think, Steph, you vouch for this, that's where it all happens. That's where all the magic happens. And that's where all your trusted voices are. So that's just a little bit about me. Oops. And now we have Steph in the spotlight.
That's very nerve-wracking.
And just wanted you to maybe just give everyone a bit of a quick overview on who you are, what you do, etc.
Perfect. I'm very happy to do that. So a little bit about my story is I'm the Chief Talent Officer at iKhokha. I've been with the business now for almost 6 years. October would probably be my 6th year with the organization. I joined the company at a very early stage of kind of their scale journey. So I joined the business probably towards the end of 2018, and they were about a headcount of 50 people. And I've obviously been part of that scale-up journey over the last 5 years with the business. And I've worked very closely with the co-founders and helped build the executive team that we have today in the business as well. So that's been a very cool part of my journey with the organization. And then just in terms of my role and what I'm responsible for at iKhokha today is I look after the full talent division, which is technically our HR division within the organization. And the departments in there or functions that report to me are reward, talent operations, talent development, and talent acquisition. So essentially, I look after everything from the moment that we go to market to attract an employee to the point that an employee might be offboarding from our business. So the full employee life cycle.
Wow. So you really got a 360-degree view of the whole people aspect within the organization. That's fantastic.
Yes.
And yeah, and I think in saying that, often employer branding sits like a sort of
almost like a marketing function outside of HR often.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful that that all is embodied within the talent space. It's very important. And I think the fact that you actually built the business with the founders, recruited some of your key players as well, really, yeah, I mean, what a pleasure. I mean, you know, you stand testimony to the growth and you've been right at the forefront. So I think it's a big factor.
I think also, I mean, one of the reasons why I took the job at iKhokha was really the opportunity to build. And I'd never, ever had that opportunity in my career when I joined the organization. And as much as it was daunting, it was also really exciting because I had the opportunity to really craft a division and build an HR division in an organization the way I really wanted to. And I got an opportunity to take my vision and bring it to life. So I think that was just a huge opportunity for me. And to be able to build out my HR team and to be able to hire every single one of those individuals that are with the business today has been a beautiful gift that I think I will always treasure in my career. And I don't think I'll probably have an opportunity to do that again.
I think that's wonderful. And thanks for sharing it. I think if you can also, if you can get people, you know, right from the get-go and have the same vision as you, you as a leader have got your vision already set in the, you know, which is very much aligned, as we know, on the telemanagement side with the objectives. And the fact that you're working so closely with your execs and, you know, that puts you in the driving seat to actually building your team out and guiding them out as well. So wonderful. Okay.
It comes with its own set of challenges as well. And one of the businesses, it's not all hunky-dory. I mean, some of the businesses that we've watched very closely over the last 5 years and that we have really tried to model a lot of the things that we do against what they do is really Stripe is one big business. And the other one is, I've now completely forgotten, Stripe and Square. And I'm busy reading a book now that's written by an ex-COO of Stripe and a woman that was part of their scale-up journey where they took their business from 400 employees to 7,000. And in that book, she actually has a chapter on working with co-founders and how challenging it actually is because they often are visionaries that don't come with any prior business-related management experience. And when you join an organization as an HR professional, you have to really set those processes. You have to build those processes. You have to get them to follow the processes and really champion them as well. So that has been challenging to a certain degree. And has definitely been part of our journey at iKhokha and still is today.
Yeah. Look, I mean, when you're a growth organization like iKhokha, it doesn't stop. I think there's learning grounds there all the time, and not just from, you know, the founders, but people like yourself that have got in at grassroots. You're learning as you're going along. But that's the exciting part of it, right? I mean, you would never get that within a large corporate. You've just got your hands on everything, you know, which is nice, being in the trenches with everything. But folks, I must just tell you that, you know, Steph and I get a bit carried away when we start talking about this topic. So I said we're going to have to just watch because there's quite a lot in this agenda that we want to cover. So I think let's just move on. So I've put a few questions together, and Steph and I have looked at them. We prioritize because, as I say, employer branding is very broad. The question that I always find comes to the forefront, and I hear this over and over again in the 12 years that I've been dealing in employer branding, is that many talent leaders find themselves in a situation where they're trying to build a business case when it comes to stakeholders. And stakeholders are saying, but we need to sell. We need to sell product, service. That's what, otherwise we're not going to actually survive. And here you come and you are saying, well, listen, please understand that without people, you're not going to be able to meet your business objectives and your goals. And this is a big thing. Now, with startups, normally you do get buy-in, but with not every organization and not every stakeholder gets it. And there's a lot of hard selling that has to be done from talent leaders to try and justify why, just as marketing has got a budget and resources, so do you in the talent management space. So, Steph, can you share specific steps or strategies that you have used to gain buy-in from your stakeholders? I'd love to hear that. Please, if you can share it.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my approach and some of the goals that were kind of set for me when I joined the organization. Being the first HR person that was appointed at iKhokha, I obviously arrived and then there was basically just a stack of things thrown on my desk, like fix this stuff, make it happen. And I was very overwhelmed when I first joined because I got all these tasks to do, but I had no budget and they allocated no tooling and no money into my cost center or to my function. So I had my set of challenges around getting buy-in, but I do think it was probably quite different to what you might experience in a corporate today. But what I did as really my first approach when I joined the organization is I went and I did an analysis of the previous financial year from a hiring perspective. And I looked at how many people had they hired over that financial year, through what channel were they hired, and if they were hired through an agency, what was the cost per placement? And then once I got all of that data, I then looked at, I'm just thinking through my thoughts here, what I did. I then got a retention kind of metric on that as well. And I went back and I looked at how many of those people that were placed through agencies were still with the business a year later. And that actually was quite shocking because at the time they had spent, I think it was R1 million on placement fees. And out of all the placements that they had made, only 2 people were still with the business. So the case that I really built and I presented to our co-founders at the time was, here, you've spent R1 million last year. Out of all the people that you've placed, X people have already left the business, which shows that the channel that you were really getting your placements through is not placing the roles correctly. And either it's because they don't understand the culture, they don't understand the role fit, and they don't really understand who the people are that would be successful working in the organization based on the stage of where we were as a company. And that was the case that I put forward. And I said to them, if you give me R1 million, I will take that R1 million and I will place all of these people for you for free if you let me spend that money on HR tooling. and at the time, it felt like an easier sell because to really pull the mirror up and show what you can do internally if you have that type of money versus what is happening externally. I managed to get that one across the line. And that kind of started my journey into really being able to build out our own hiring processes as iKhokha and as a brand. And I started on that piece of work. And then when I started doing the actual recruitment for some of the roles, then I really got into the trenches and I really understood what the challenges were that we were facing to try and attract talent into the business. We didn't have a lot of money. We couldn't pay high salaries. We had no benefits. We had a brand that nobody knew in the market. And that was really, really challenging to hire for. So my next presentation was, I need to build an employer brand and I need somebody to help me do it because I can't do do it as one person. And my strategy around that was to really request partnership from the marketing team and for us to have a shared goal that needed to be achieved that year in order for me to really get their buy-in and their support. And then we moved forward with the process of creating shared goals with HR and marketing.
Wow, what a success story, hey? It's fantastic. And again, it's not all pretty pictures, hey, in the beginning, because you have to, you're basically putting your heart on the line. You've got this 1 million rand that you need to spend, and how you distribute it and how you use it effectively and efficiently is really what your CEO and all your C-suite are looking at. They're saying, right, deliver the goods. You said you can do it. But I think through those hardships at the same time, when you are put to the test like that, I think it just makes me think, Steph, the fact that there's so many organizations that are doing the same old, and they do not change it up, and they're spending money and they don't relook. You were forced to relook. Well, it was you actually took it upon yourself to say, I've got this pot of money. I think we need to reskin it. I think we need to relook at the distribution, which often happens. It's too easy, that Band-Aid effect, and just doing the same old, which is insanity. To be in that hamster wheel, right?
No, absolutely. And I think often people, or in our industry as HR professionals, we don't go back and analyze the data.
Correct.
And the data is what you need to go back and look at, because that will set your course, or that will tell you what's wrong and what problem you need to solve for. And if you can define what problem you're solving for, then you can work on a solution. But if you haven't got a clearly defined problem, then often people are just throwing around ideas and overlaying their experience from another company to solve for a problem they don't really know that they're solving for. So I think it's really, really important to go back and do the data analysis and to really understand what the problem is that you're facing. And if you understand that problem, you will be able to build solutions around how you are going to try and solve for it.
Yeah. No, lovely.
Yeah. I think also just in our industry as well, like, not to say that you shouldn't use a recruitment agency. I think there is a place for them in certain hiring strategies. But for us at the time, we couldn't find like a percentage lower than 12% on an annual fee for a placement. And for us also as a fintech business, tech salaries are astronomical in SA. And you are looking at paying 150K placement fee for a senior developer, and you need 12 senior developers just at one layer in your organization, and that's what your investment needs to be, and you've got a 3-month guarantee period on that placement. Like, that's quite risky.
It is risky, but it also rips your budget out completely, and it's also short term because it's a Band-Aid effect. You need to build a brand that is formidable so that people can start knocking on your door. And this is a conversation that I often have, is that it's fine, but something has to give eventually, because where is the return on investment, especially if you hemorrhage those people after you've placed them? And then also it's the acquisition part as well. How do you sustain acquiring high demand talent all the time? You can't keep throwing money at it, so yeah, okay, let's move on to the next one. But that's fantastic tips there, honestly. And I'm sure our audience would appreciate that honesty as well. So when it comes to leveraging your employer brand in talent acquisition, which is obviously a strong passion and discussion that we talk about all the time, Steph,
yes,
can you explain how leveraging your employer brand has specifically helped iKhokha attract? Because obviously, people are hanging on to their talent. Talent's now starting to say, grow me, otherwise I'm going to look elsewhere. So it's not about just the talent acquisition part. It's also about it's retaining those people, keeping them happy. Otherwise, they are going to get restless and look elsewhere, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so it's one thing attracting, but then you also have to secure those individuals. So just give me a little bit of an overview on that. I'm sure our people would love to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a broad question. Maybe where I'll start is just around the attraction side of building that employer brand. So when we kind of built our strategy, or I should say, yeah, when we built our strategy, our main intention was really to be very specific around the people that we targeted and that we thought would be successful working in a startup environment. And if anyone watched our first employer brand video, our whole campaign was why you should not work at iKhokha. And we specifically wanted to create kind of like a shock factor around that. And we wanted to also amplify all of the characteristics and behaviors that we would want to see in a person who joined our organization. And we were very explicit in the messaging to say, if you don't tick these boxes, don't apply for a job with us because you won't be happy. And that campaign actually was extremely successful, and it was the backbone of the success of our hiring strategy. So I think when you are going to build an employer brand, you have to be very clear on who you are targeting, and who you want to attract and why you want to attract them into your organization. That's like number one for me. And then the retention part really comes into your social proof. And that social proof, or that brand proof, is what candidates experience when they go through your hiring process and what they experience when they engage with your culture, they come to your head office, they engage with a stakeholder or an employee of your organization. And those two have to connect, and they have to be authentic. And what you say, somebody has to experience as well. And I think we've got that measurement, like or not really the measurement, but we've got that magic done really well. And I think that is really because I spent a lot of time in the trenches and I really understood like what our culture was as a business and who the employees are that work there and why they work there. And we just basically took those trusted voices that you mentioned earlier on in your introduction, and we amplified those stories. And yeah, that's been part of our success.
That's wonderful. And I think, Steph, you've made two big mentions there. The first thing is about the fact that I think it's important. Well, I know it's important that organizations need to be a little bit more authentic. They need to be a little bit more, sometimes vulnerable, because sometimes, and an organization's almost like a human as well. It's not going to be perfect. There are going to be areas that need addressing. And sometimes you put the shiny picture up front and people apply and the wheels fall off when they get onboarded and they start entering that whole employee experience, right? So I think upfront, right from the get-go, it's important that that level of authenticity is present, because there is going to be a shock horror story down the line. And that's when people do start upping and going, because the beautiful picture that was portrayed on social media can actually be disrupted completely by maybe just one talent leader, possibly not maybe meeting their values that you portray to say, or deliver on your values, or behaviors and that kind of thing. So it is so essential. It is so essential to.
It's so essential.
Yeah.
And I think also part of our journey as well, and what helped us is we ran a survey when we built out our EVP with the business, and I developed a set of questions that we asked obviously our employees, and through that data we really surfaced like why people work in our organization, why did they join, why do they stay, what do they love about their jobs, what do they like about the culture. There was a variety of questions that I asked, and basically through their responses, we used their feedback to underpin how we built out our employer brand strategy as well. So that authenticity and that connection was coming from the voices of our employees. We didn't come up with it as a senior leadership team. We didn't come up with it as an executive team. We asked our staff.
Yeah, which is how it should be, right? Because they're the ones that are actually carrying the name. And
absolutely.
And I think it's about the brutal truths. It's about the brutal truth up front to say, this is what we are, this is what we're not. If you don't like it, then maybe carry on very nicely looking elsewhere. And especially when it comes to shaping an organization that is high growth and you have to deliver the goods. At the end of the day, you know, if you're going to get someone that's been in a corporate environment, maybe that environment is not for them, because it does take a certain type of individual, you know, let's face it.
It does.
So it's not for everyone, you know, it is not for everyone, but rather, you know, let the individual opt out by way of you being super, super blatantly direct up front and not waste their time or your time either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's such a valid point for talent acquisition professionals and talent leaders as well, because I think we have been trained to desperately plead top talent to come and work for us and to throw whatever we can, the kitchen sink, at this individual from whatever big brand company and beg them to come and work for us. But in our kind of like conceptual sessions around how we built our first employer brand campaign, one of the conversations we actually had was off the back of an experience I had at a previous employer, where we used to go to career fairs around South Africa and talk to the students. And there would be whatever 15 big branded companies there. Everybody would be gifting and everybody would be trying to give you a sales pitch on why you should submit your application to my company. And when we were having our kind of like brainstorming session around it, we were like, why are we all begging people to come and work here when we know there is a very special personality that will survive and thrive in a startup culture? And then we decided to use a bit of reverse psychology and flip it on its head and say, these are the people that we want. So don't come and apply for us. Don't come and apply for a job at iKhokha if you don't tick these boxes, because this is the environment, this is what we're going to expect, and this is what you're going to experience.
Which is good, because there again, therein lies the brutal honesty, and therein lies, you know, we're not going to waste your time and you're not going to waste our time, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day. But what I'm saying is, when you are in other organizations that are possibly corporates and that, they don't always have that luxury of being able to do it, because there is a certain way and there is a certain process and that kind of thing. But the onus also, I believe, Steph, has to come from you as a talent acquisition leader to put your hand up and say, I'm sorry, I am not going to carry out this talent acquisition process like this because I don't think it's authentic. I actually am going to dig my heels in and say, this is what we are doing wrong, and this is how we go about it. Because you know what? People are going to leave down the line. So I'm doing you a favor by actually wearing my heart on the sleeve and saying, this is what it's about if you don't like it. So, you know, don't sugarcoat it. This is what it's about. But I think, again, the desperation is in trying to find those high demand people. So it's easy for me to sit here and say that when you're desperately trying to fill roles that have been sitting vacant and the objectives need to be met within the organization. But again, it depends on you as the representative, as the talent advisor, to be able to have those conversations with your hiring managers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also something that businesses and corporates probably don't do very well is you need to, or what we did at iKhokha is we looked at a customer journey and like the 3 stages of a customer journey, which is attraction, what is it? It's attraction, something conversion, attraction, consideration, conversion. And I basically took those 3 stages and I overlaid that over a hiring process. And then there's obviously the first stage, and that's like somebody is searching for a job. Like, what is that person doing and how do we attract them into our funnel? Then that person is looking at iKhokha, looking at Yoko, looking at, I don't know, Flash or pay fast or something like at Ozo, and how do we then take that person and move them into a consideration phase where they actually go to our careers website, they start reading the job spec, and they start associating with our brand and our values, and then how do we convert them into wanting to apply for a job for us? Then they go through our hiring process in that final stage of conversion, and we extend an offer to them. So that whole process from that point of like starting your employer brand and creating an interest and an awareness, all the
Yeah,
way to the point that you onboard the person into the organization. We then
yeah,
looked at every single tiny little touch point that a person will have with our company through that entire customer journey. And we made sure that that process is a good candidate experience, that the messaging is consistent, that it's written in the right tonality, that it reflects our culture, and that process needs to be updated and reviewed on an annual basis. And I think a lot of businesses don't actually do that. And the
totally.
way that I kind of agonized over that journey was to actually sit online and just go through multiple people's application processes. I would just sit and go through the variety of different companies' careers websites, go look at their LinkedIn page, go look at their socials, go and apply for a job with a ghost profile, and really
Yeah,
understand what those experiences were and how
yeah,
I wanted to create a very special experience for somebody who was coming through a customer journey with iKhokha.
I love it. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to move on because there's a few questions here, but we're completely aligned as always. So I think this is a burning question for many, and it's all about the adoption of employer branding as talent leaders. Talent leaders at the best of times aren't overstretched. Okay, so what are those practical steps that they can take, Steph, in order to adopt that employer branding mindset? Because obviously that transformation or that shift from the transactional, conventional to spicing it up by way of marketing and truly, infusing what it's like to work within that organization, over and above just the qualifications and the skills and all of that, the behaviors, the values, how you roll, what you do, that kind of thing, value proposition, etc. What steps can talent leaders or teams take in order to really pull employer branding into the center of their management strategies?
It's a great question. Whenever I get asked this one, I always struggle to answer it because I hope to provide an inspirational story. But the truth is, I don't have one based on the experiences that I've gone through. And overstretched is unfortunately what I would reference as quite a normal state working in a startup. And I feel like I haven't really been in a typical normal state for a long time because there's just always too much to do and not enough help. So I don't think I have the magic answer on how you manage being overstretched, but I think how you ensure that you stay on course when you are building out an employer brand strategy is that if you are confident that you have built a solid plan and a solid strategy and you have very clear executional milestones, you need to make sure that you have partnership in delivering that strategy because you won't be able to do it alone.
Yeah.
You've got to share the load, and you've got to bring people on the journey to be involved and to be passionate about what you're delivering. And if you can find partnership with marketing, especially, I think that's really where the magic has happened for us at iKhokha. I've got a very close relationship with the marketing team now. It wasn't always like that. We used to have a lot of conflict, but now we work really well together. And my employer brand strategy would fall on its face if I didn't have the backing of the marketing team. And we've actually got to the point where employer brand and master brand are actually like parallel, almost like brand campaigns that are running for iKhokha. And they've both done an awareness job for us as an organization, which is quite unusual. And it's something that we've only really kind of like understood over the last year or so as a company, really how powerful our employer brand has become in comparison to our master brand as well. But I'm just thinking, what are other things that would be really helpful? Is there anything else there that maybe I've missed?
Yeah, but I think, Steph, you've hit the nail on the head, and you need the functional support. And it's not just marketing and comms, it's also your learning and development. It's also the people. It's also about the people that deliver on the front line as well. They have to carry it through. They have to support you. They have to, it's not just about putting it out there and doing fancy footwork with videos, social media, wonderful employee advocacy programs and everything. It's also about the behavior. And I think that's where a lot of it falls flat. It's the fact that the behaviors and the delivery of those values that you confess to be made of has to be seen in motion. Otherwise, you're not going to be true to your brand. There often is a challenge between marketing and comms because there's kickback, because their focus is, I've got enough work from a product marketing, consumer marketing perspective. And I think naturally, if you are starting out with employer branding, you have to do a lot of shaping and selling and really convincing as well. There's a lot around that, getting on board.
Yeah, I think also you have to be very clear on ownership. And I think in a lot of businesses, employer brand is not always owned by the talent leader. And I think that's probably one of the discussions that I would make sure is very clear upfront. Who owns it and who do you partner with? And you need to be very clear on those roles when you are building out these strategies, because it can almost tear your whole strategy apart, and it can also tear your team apart if those roles and responsibilities and ownership and accountability isn't very clear upfront.
Yeah,
because you need to also have one voice and one decision maker when it comes to employer brand.
And we've had this discussion before. It's almost like Orphan Annie out on the limb there. They don't actually, employer branding doesn't have a home. It sort of floats between and all over the place. It can't be like that. Otherwise, it will fall through the cracks. So agree with you completely.
Yeah, and I think you also have to be very clear on whose voice owns employer brand as well, because when it comes to marketing teams, they don't always talk the voice of culture. And when employer brand is what you are delivering out there and it's got to connect to your hiring process and what a person experiences, it's very important that the right voice is making the final decisions on what goes out onto a public platform. So you can ensure that it is aligned to your culture within your business. And I think that's really, really important.
And to your point, that's why your relationship with marketing and comms has to be integrated, because they have got their B2B mindset traditionally. So talent, the talent mindset, the candidate, the employee mindset, you almost need to onboard them onto that way of thinking. But once they've got it, I mean, hey, you A for away, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we started our journey with our partnership with marketing, I pulled together a strategy presentation on why I needed their help and where their input would be valuable. And I presented that to the full marketing function in the business. And after that, we agreed to partner on certain specific goals that I had in mind. And then we shared those goals from a performance perspective. So at the end of the year, we together as a team would be rated on the success of those metrics.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And it makes such sense. Hey? It just makes such logical sense.
I think that was the turning point for us as a business, was when we actually had shared goals with marketing.
Yeah, love it. Okay, differentiating in talent acquisition, and I'm sure again a lot of people are like biting at the bit here. And what do you believe you're doing differently? Because I mean, I've seen the amazing work that you're putting out there, and I can see wholeheartedly you've got marketing and comms on on the same page as you. But what are you doing differently in terms of your talent competitors? I mean, in finding and retaining that talent?
I feel like I should ask the floor for answers. um, Celeste, to be honest, I think in the journey for me and the thinking and the creativity and building the strategy, I didn't want to obviously be like any of the businesses that I had researched. There were certain, I think, components or parts of journeys that I really liked, and that I modeled certain modules of our process against. But I really wanted to be different. And I think it goes back to what I said earlier around when we built our EVP and asking our employees why they work at iKhokha and really understanding the reasons why they stay. Because 3 years ago, our business was very small from a headcount perspective. I mean, today we 370 odd employees, and back then we were 50 to 100. And working at a business like iKhokha was not attractive. There was like nothing exciting about it besides the opportunity to learn and grow and build and potentially be part of a success story. Like, those were the attractive things about it. So really asking people why they took jobs there and stayed was very, very valuable insight. And really, really important in how we chose to differentiate our story and our messaging. But I think looking at as a customer journey is probably something we do quite differently to a lot of other businesses. I don't think a lot of other talent teams are probably aware of things like service design, experience design, and those are skills that are prevalent in our business. And I've learned a lot from some of those employees who are subject matter experts in that design thinking approach. And they've taught me about these customer journeys. And then by understanding, actually through hiring all these people and what they do from a skills-based perspective, I've taken some of their methods and frameworks and applied it into my space because I thought that I could really derive value from it. And that probably leans into this new world of like recruitment marketing.
Yes.
And really doing a lot of desktop research around like what it is to do recruitment marketing. And I felt really passionate about it because I felt like it was the only lever I had to pull with pretty much no budget and almost no team to really be able to deliver the goals that I had to achieve. And I think it was towards the end of 2021, the goal that I had was I had to hire 214 people in 14 months. And that was horrifying. And I had to be creative. I honestly had no other option. I had to figure out a way through. And this was really my idea. And somehow it's worked.
Well done. I think you've done an amazing job. I'm moving through now because I'm watching our time. But if there's any questions, please feel free to pop a message to me. I'm just keeping my course here. And then I think, I mean, the lessons learned. I mean, there's been a lot of success you've spoken about. And I know that every time I chat to you, you're very, very stretched and rushing. But you're now scaling up. The business is growing. iKhokha is going to be more than 300 employees soon. I just know it. And you obviously have to keep this freshness that you have created. So my question to you is, how are you, not so much lessons learned, but more about how are you going to do this, Steph? Because obviously that is the secret sauce, right? I'm putting you in the spot here. I'm putting you in the limelight.
I think the secret sauce is staying close to the people of your business and telling their stories. And if you don't know your people and you don't know like the genuine like pillars of the culture of your organization, you'll very quickly lose touch with your strategy from an employer brand perspective. And I think every 2 years you need to probably be redoing your EVP as well, because that data is really important. And I think a lot of businesses do their EVP almost at an executive level and not at a grassroots level. And I think that's probably what I'm going to do to maintain my secret sauce. Is I'm going to go back and redo my EVP. I'm going to go back, I'm going to redo my candidate personas. I'm going to relook what are my critical skills. I'm going to relook how the hiring landscape has changed for a lot of those different profiles that we look for in terms of placing and hiring at iKhokha. Because I also think the landscape is changing a lot. The workforce has shifted hugely. I saw earlier our reward manager, Megan, is on the call, but her and I had a discussion this week saying, like, how do we anticipate the trends that are coming, and how do we safeguard from dealing with some of the issues that we've recently been faced with as an organization? And do we have the right data sets was a question that we also discussed. And the reality is we do have the right data sets, but there are so many different like external factors that are impacting the workforce today. It's impacting retention strategies, it's impacting reward strategies, it's impacting hiring strategies. And we haven't actually journeyed through these things yet before as a country. So we're up against a global competitive landscape now, and I think everybody's trying to figure out how we safeguard against a lot of the issues that we are starting to see come up.
So true, so true.
I don't have the answers yet.
Look, I mean, there's only so much control that you do have, and I think it's about shielding them, but also being mindful of the fact that we're living in a changing world all the time. And if you're going to, if you're going to apply the same principles from a year or two ago, it's not actually going to fly next year or the following year. You have to be on it. It's work in progress. And it's fluid. Your employer value proposition, your employer brand is actually fluid. And it has to be kept looked at and molded and shaped, and ensuring that there's relevance as well. Otherwise, you are going to lose people, and you're not going to be able to attract those people if you're giving them something that was offered 2-3 years ago,
Yeah. Absolutely. I think also the voices of talent acquisition, specifically professionals, need to be heard more at a higher level in organizations.
Agreed.
And I rely heavily, now that I'm not doing the active recruiting myself and sourcing, I rely heavily on my team of talent acquisition professionals to tell me what people are saying about our brand. And that moment when we send out a direct message or your first engagement message to a potential hire, like that first engagement point is so important from a database perspective, because you get feedback. Is your employer brand campaign working? Have people seen it? Have they heard about it? Why are they replying to your message? Are they interested because they watched a funny video last week, or are they interested because a friend got hired by iKhokha? Like there's a lot of data. There's a lot of data that your talent acquisition team has, and sometimes even they don't realize the gold mine of data that they're sitting on. But if you are aware of that and you're asking your team the right questions, like you're going to constantly be getting feedback loops. And I think that's really important to understand and to be aware of, and to also track.
Yeah. Do you want to come and do my training? Because this is what I cover in all of my training, Steph.
Maybe one day, Celeste.
Wonderful. Okay, I think we're getting to the end. So on that note, and I'm sorry to just dive in here, but all the information that Steph has been sharing with us is so essential when it comes to your talent acquisition and the management that you are doing within your space. And it's something that I have built within the Employer Branding Learning Academy, because I really do believe that we have to make this shift. And I mean, Steph stands testimony to how she has actually enriched her people, her processes, and her systems. And I ran these master classes in May and June, and we had nice brands there. And honestly, it's made such a difference to how they are facing themselves as a personal brand and engaging with not only employees but candidates, but also how they're putting their whole recruitment, marketing, and employer branding strategies together. So, I think if I can just say that I especially held this spotlight today as well because I wanted to launch the fact that I'm putting a National Women's Month special together, because I really want to encourage people to start thinking the way Steph is thinking, in terms of enriching not only her personal brand. She's a personal brand in herself, in how she has actually built her team and built the whole talent acquisition and management system within iKhokha. And this is why I love talking to you, Steph, because we're so connected when it comes to all of those touch points, you know, those important imperatives and everything. So if any of you are interested to have a look at the Employer Branding Africa Learning Academy, please have a look at it. These are in Joburg and Cape Town. I have tried to launch in Durban. There wasn't much of an appetite, but maybe, you never know. Hey, Steph, after this discussion that we've had, maybe people will, you know, be enlightened.
I think that it's such a good opportunity to have these masterclasses available as well, because I mean, a few years ago when I was looking for some sort of insight or an opportunity for somebody to help me with the challenges that I was facing, a lot of these things weren't that readily available, and it's a really difficult thing to navigate and to understand if you're not naturally passionate, you're not naturally creative. So I mean, this is an awesome opportunity to jump on and have a chance to really learn from somebody who can guide you in building a really strong strategy for your business.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, and it's I've also worked on projects, 2-3 year projects in Zimbabwe, in Botswana as well, and they've been interesting journeys, because it's not a quick fix. It's a 1 to 2 year journey, and it's a business imperative that organizations adopt. It's part of their business strategy at the end of the day. But if you cannot do in person, then there's also the opportunity of doing the online courses, which is on-demand courses within the Learning Academy. And it's from the basics, you know, from your personal brand. Because like Steph, if you did not adopt employer branding the way you did, there's no ways you would have been able to convince marketing and comms to come on board with you and get all those trusted voices that are on this call today, and give you the support. I mean, it's just phenomenal. It really is.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Only a pleasure. And then just lastly, any questions? Any questions for Steph? I know we're running out of time, but I think we've done a pretty good job, considering we do talk the two of us talk the hind leg of a donkey when it comes to employer branding. Are there any questions? I'm glad we had so many people sticking with us through this conversation, which means it's actually a compliment to us, hey, Steph, because they obviously enjoyed it. And, you know, it's also about operationalizing it. A lot of people, they build a strategy and that, but then they say, how do you actually implement and operationalize all of this? Where do you start? And that is why I love your story, because, I mean, you speak straight from the heart of what you went through, you know.
I like to refer to it as war stories. I'll give you the PG version one day. But the reality is, it is really difficult. And I think any employer brand strategy that you're going to try and apply in any organization, in order to really give it due diligence and really give it a crack, you need to have a 12-month runway, and you need to measure those metrics that you put in place over a 12-month period. It's not a short-term fix, and it takes time to really understand and enhance your strategy along the way as well.
Yeah, no, completely. I'm on board there. So my last slide is really around, if you want to get hold of myself, or if you want to get hold of Steph, we're on LinkedIn. That's our email addresses. Feel free to reach out. As I say, Steph really loves the community, and she's building fantastic networks there in the Durban arena as well. And I'd love to one day be able to come and do some master classes in Durban as well. I think there's a lot of benefits to it. As I say, that whole conversion into an employer brand marketer is really what is needed nowadays, especially if you want to retain and attract your people. So, yeah. Any questions? I see people are dropping off now. If there are any questions, please pop them in, in the chat. Otherwise, as I say, please take our take note of our LinkedIn profiles as well as our email addresses, and we would love to address you and give you a leg up when it comes to employer branding and recruitment marketing. Steph, any questions or any comments from your side? It's been a pleasure having you today.
Thank you for having me, Celeste. No questions from my side. I was just so excited to see quite a few people that I have walked part of my career journey with over the last 5 years on the call. So shout out to anyone who knows me personally. I'm really happy to see your names on the list here. And I hope to meet up with you guys in Durban at some point in time again.
Wonderful. You've got a great following.
Yeah. It's good to see, because you lose touch with so many people that you work with in your career as well. Or I have, at least, probably because I've been working at a startup, which has basically left me underground for the last 6 years. But I'm finally lifting my head up for the first time. And it's great to see some of the special relationships that I formed in my career kind of popping up on this call today.
It's wonderful. It's actually great. Very, very, it's great. And it's also the community. You know, you think it's a small world, and you think it's a big world, but in fact, it's a small world, especially when it comes to, you know, our respective cities and that as well. Steph, I mean, Durban's most probably a village. Hey, everyone's connected.
Definitely, in some way or another.
Wonderful.
It looks like Jeff has got a question for us. Jeff, I know you.
I do. Hi, thank you. This has been awesome. My question is, do you have a North Star metric as far as substantiating the ROI of this whole exercise? Is it like ENPS? Is it cost of hiring? Is it retention? What are you looking at above all else?
I actually had a few different metrics that I set when we kind of started the strategy. And so the first one really was the channel that we chose to build our employer brand. So based on some focus groups that I ran across the organization around like critical personas that we needed to hire out of that 214 human group, the channel that people basically went to go and seek career opportunities on most frequently was LinkedIn. So we decided that would be the channel that would indicate our success metric. And our metric was very simple. It was grow our follower base from 5,000 to 20,000. Today we're sitting on 50,000, which has been awesome to see. And through that process, we needed to find the most cost-effective way to grow that follower base. So, you know, a lot of people will run a variety of campaigns around how to acquire those followers on that platform. But basically what we did is we ran tests on what is the most efficient way to acquire those followers. And we looked at a variety of different things throughout the year. So we would commit on either a monthly or a quarterly basis to say, cool, we're going to A/B test this hypothesis, and we're going to spend a bit of money behind that. And then we're going to track it. We're going to see what the results were. And depending on what those results were, we would either throw a little bit more money behind it to see if it got better, and if that data line continued in a positive trajectory, or we would come up with a new experiment and test a new hypothesis. And we did this throughout the year, just monitoring it constantly and iterating. And then we kind of found our secret sauce, which I can't tell you about, Jeff. And then and then we basically tossed everything else to the side, and we just work with the method that we found has really helped us grow our follower base in the most, I shouldn't say the most cheapest way, but in the most cost-effective way with a tiny little budget. But
Thank
that was
you.
our North Star, was really building that channel and the followership behind that channel.
Yeah.
The
Cool.
other one that was secondary to that was traffic to our careers page. Because
Always.
obviously at the time we needed to increase the quality of our applications to our jobs, because one of the biggest issues for us as a TA team is we had such low applications to our job adverts, because nobody knew about iKhokha, nobody wanted to work for us. So we had to actively go and source our people all the time. And we really, the first stage was grow the number or the volume of applications that were coming through. And then the second stage of iteration was improve the quality of applications that were coming through. And that kind of talks to our targeted approach around our messaging and who we actually want to work at the organization versus just everybody applying because it's a job vacancy.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think the big factor as well is, and still a lot of organizations do this, is they throw a few jobs on their website and they think people are just going to stumble across it. And that's obviously where the recruitment marketing piece comes into play. It's a call to action. You know, if you think from a consumer perspective, you know, you don't have retailers putting food on the shelf and you'd never ever get pamphlets on specials for the month at month end. There is always a call to action. There is a whole marketing chain behind that, multi-channels of marketing in order to push the products off their shelves. So why should it not be the same when it comes to, you know, jobs on a career side, right?
100%. I think also the thing that's really important is I stand to be corrected because I haven't checked the metric just before this call, but we obviously track through all our placements a source of channel as well. So we've got that kind of like that metric of where people are applying via to come into our ecosystem. So we also know that, cool, we've placed X amount of people through LinkedIn, which has been active sourcing. We've placed X amount of people through our ATS system, which means they've actively applied, which kind of talks to our employer brand. And I think the last time I looked at it, it was sitting at about a 60-40, and 40% were active applicants and 60% we had actively sourced, which is a really good metric to have.
Brilliant. Very, very good. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
You just got to keep checking all these things all the time, Jeff.
It doesn't, it's work in progress, continuously.
Yeah, it takes time to get there as well. It never looked like that before.
Yeah, sure. It's a lot of work involved. Can just imagine. Any other questions? We've gone a little bit over, and our people don't want to leave us. They're enjoying your conversation, Steph. Any other questions? No?
In case anyone needs to know, I always say there's no stupid question because I ask a lot of stupid questions still today. But I'm a firm believer that if you aren't sure, check.
Exactly. I do that as well. And you can think of me what you want, even if it is a stupid question. All right. Well, then I am going to bid everyone goodbye and say thank you once again, Steph. I hope you enjoyed the fireside chat. I hope it was as casual as you were hoping for. Not too structured and corporate. And I hope everyone else enjoyed the discussion. There were a lot of golden nuggets that were shared here by Steph, which I had no doubt was going to be the case. A lot of practical tips and things that you can take back into your workplace. As I say, if you'd like to reach out to either one of us, please feel free. And go to the Employer Branding Africa Learning Academy. Go and have a look at previous Spotlight recordings. There's a wealth of information there as well from the other leaders that I've hosted. And then see what courses you would be keen on taking, either in the flow of work on demand, or possibly there's also a waiting list if you feel that you would like to have me come to KZN. I'd love that. And we can try and put together a public masterclass on employer branding. But other than that, I bid you all farewell and thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Bye, everyone. Thank you
Bye,
for
everyone.
coming.
Thank you.
That was very insightful.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, Celeste.
Bye.